What are your thoughts on the missing tourist submarine that went down to see the Titanic? A movie will be out soon. A bit morbid, but if they didn't go quickly, I wonder what the other passengers said to the CEO before they all died. The Logitech controller probably didn't kill them. Probably. If anything. From what I understand, it was the most reliable thing on board. Submarines are fucking terrifying. End of story. It's looking like they're goners, so I just hope it imploded. The thought of being trapped in a little metal can on the seabed stewing in your demise for days. In pitch black while you either slowly freeze or suffocate to death. What could be worse? The terror and total despair. The panic and claustrophobia. The guilt of a father bringing his teenage son. I just hope it was quick. I wonder if one day there will be another tourist submarine that goes down to see it. There's 3 possibilities. 1. It imploded during its descent. 2. They're stuck underwater with no hope of rescue. 3. It's floating on the surface somewhere but they're still stuck inside because it can only be opened from the outside. Like attempting to climb the Everest or crashing your personal helicopter. It's an expensive way to die. Nightmare fuel. I'm extremely claustrophobic and I have a fear of drowning. So that whole situation gives me a panic attack just thinking about it. I just hope it went quickly. People keep referring to the sinking of the Titanic as rich folk dying. The overwhelming majority of people who died were poor or middle class. I think it's pretty fucked up that some rich folk sunk and died and then 100 and some years later they did it again. Edit. Everyone knows that mostly poor folk died in the first sink. But we don't make fun of victims in this house. Hence their absence from the above. Well, they've had the most authentic Titanic experience in about 100 years. Personally, I think they're dead. I think it sunk and they got crushed under the pressure. It happened quick. That's why we can't hear anything off it. That's why there's no signal or SOS. My guess. Anyway. All of the warning signs were there. The lawsuits against the company. The past employees stating that the company standards weren't high enough for an exploration of this magnitude. The state of the metal death tube before the descent. This is just Challenger all over again. But instead of miles high in the atmosphere with millions watching, it was miles underwater while nobody was around. The greed of companies will continue to doom people in horrific ways until the end of time because people with more money than we can imagine won't listen to those who know the science. They paid a whole lot of money to die. Thoughts? Sad. And I assume the lawsuits start flying and that company never sends a sub down again. You couldn't pay me $250,000 to do that. I feel bad for them. But it's a little like when someone goes to the running of the bulls in Spain and gets trampled by a bull. Like, you had to know there was a very realistic chance of that happening. I'm not saying they deserved to die or anything. But if you don't want to down, maybe stay away from experimental submarines. When is the last possible survival time? Hard to get a more accurate experience as a superfan. Not enough lifeboats. Again. It's a sad way to go. I can't imagine how scary that would be. I watched an interview with someone showing off the controls and inside of the submarine. And you couldn't pay me to go down in that thing. They're dead. It's scary. And of course I want them found alive. But at some point, we have to acknowledge that this is hubris of the highest order. This story will be a movie, one day. As much as I find the whole thing to be ridiculous, one thing I know for sure is that the father in that sub who brought his son with him is sure regretting it now. The sea always wins. I think the submersible company really dropped the ball. Many design elements of the craft were experimental and put into service without proper testing. The manufacturer of the window rated it to 1300 m, which is less than a third of the planned dive depth. The manufacturer refused to spend the money to have a 4,000 meters window designed and built. They paid $250,000 for a Titanic experience. They got it. I saw the inside of the submarine and I shuddered involuntarily. Just the mere thought of it freaks me out. I can't imagine the stifling horror of being trapped in that thing thousands of feet under the sea, with no means of salvation. Just horrific. I think that if it's true that the window wasn't rated for the depth of the Titanic, if it's true that the hull of the sub was showing wear, and if it's true that they waited 8 hours to report them missing, then those who made the decision to send people, including a 19-year-old, into potentially fatal depths that the vessel allegedly couldn't handle, need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, if applicable. They're dead. And I hope it was an implosion so there was no suffering. Spending $250K to die on an at best shoddy submersible. Send James Cameron down to figure out this whole mess. It's an unfortunate and terrifying thing to have happen. It's a risk that was taken and it went wrong out of however many trips they've taken. And I can only pray that they get found in time and safely. Absolutely horrendous way to go. If I had all that money, no way I'm risking my life going into some submarine to see where other people have died. Only takes one stupid decision. I thought they were dead, but I read a headline that said banging sounds were heard during the search. So now I'm thinking they are stuck in the ocean panicking and running out of air. It sounds terrifying and I feel very bad for them. It's unfortunate that people had to die because a billionaire cut corners to make this submarine happen. It's the ultimate fuck around and find out, but at the expense of so many others. It's horrifying. No doubt about it. While we are on the topic, you know at some point someone in that submarine, if they are alive and waiting, is making jokes to keep morale up, and I'd love to hear what kind of humor people are capable of in those dark-ass times. Probably one of the most horrific ways to die. But they chose to do stupid shit and stupid shit happened. I'm holding out hope that they'll be found before time runs out. But I know it's a long shot. If they did perish in that sub, I hope it was quick. Even if they do find them, it's going to be nearly impossible to hook it back up and take it to the surface. GPS doesn't work that deep, so they can't be tracked. They're on a continental shelf, so we have to pray that they didn't fall off of it. The sub itself can withstand a depth of 3.5 miles if I remember correctly. So they could still technically be alive if they fell into the trench. I really hope they didn't fall in the trench. I feel bad for them. But it also irks me that there are so many people in equally life-threatening scenarios across the globe, but we do little to help them and the news doesn't cover them. I'm sad and I really hope they're found. I don't care how rich they are. There is a father and son on that sub. It hurts my heart thinking how excited they probably were to go on this bonding trip together. Nobody deserves to die like this. I'm now invested in checking every few hours for a rescue update.